Hey fam, welcome back to Mr. Greg Stories, where we turn real-life injustice into powerful storytelling that hits hard. Now let me ask you this, have you ever been judged just for existing in your own space? Imagine updating your Wi-Fi password, only for the cops to show up at your door because somebody thought you looked suspicious. Sounds wild, right? Well, buckle up, because today's story is not just about one nosy Karen. It's about a black man who kept his cool, but what he did next left the whole country speechless. But before we dive in, tell me, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Drop your city and time in the comments, I'll be reading through them all. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Alright y'all, grab a snack, lock in, and let's get into this jaw-dropping story of racial profiling, revenge, and a twist you will not see coming. It was a calm Saturday morning in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Maple Creek. Birds chirped overhead, and sunlight poured through the neatly trimmed hedges that lined the cul-de-sacs. Most residents were still enjoying their coffee or scrolling through morning news on their phones, except for one man, Marcus Green. Marcus, a 32-year-old tech consultant, had just moved into his new home on Honeysuckle Drive 3 days earlier. He'd been working long hours and finally got a free weekend to finish unpacking and set up his home office. The last thing on his checklist? Changing the name and password of his Wi-Fi. Standing in his garage with a small toolbox in hand, Marcus had the panel open on his fiber optic modem and was typing commands into his laptop. He was calm, dressed in a navy hoodie and gray joggers, and focused on his work. Across the street, however, behind her trimmed rose bushes, Karen Whitmore peered through her blinds like a hawk spotting prey. A woman in her mid-50s with bleach blonde hair, a pink visor, and a rigid sense of suburban order, Karen had appointed herself the neighborhood's unofficial overseer. She narrowed her eyes and muttered, "What's he doing now?" Karen didn't like change, and she especially didn't like new neighbors she hadn't approved of. Her unease wasn't about Marcus's clothes, tools, or laptop. It was the simple fact that a black man had moved into her quiet, mostly white neighborhood, and dared to use electronics in his garage. Karen grabbed her phone, fingers trembling with self-righteous indignation, and dialed 911. "Yes, hello," she said, breathless. "There's a suspicious man. He's been in the garage across the street for a while now. He has wires, a computer. I think he might be hacking something. I'm really scared. Can you please send someone?" Dispatch took her report, filed it as a suspicious activity, and sent out a unit. Back in the garage, Marcus was completely unaware of the chaos brewing just beyond his driveway. He grinned to himself as he renamed his Wi-Fi Prettyfly for a Wi-Fi and updated his security protocols. He was just finishing when he heard the faint sound of tires crunching over gravel. 2 squad cars rolled up to his house. Marcus raised his eyebrows, puzzled. The officers stepped out slowly, hands hovering near their weapons. "Sir," one of them called out, "step away from the equipment and keep your hands visible." Marcus blinked. "What?" "I said hands visible. Step away now." Confused but compliant, Marcus raised his hands and took a few steps back. "Can someone please tell me what's going on?" Karen peeked through her blinds, watching with vindicated satisfaction. The officer, a tall man with a buzz cut, looked Marcus over and then said, "We got a report of suspicious activity. Neighbors said you were messing with some kind of wiring, maybe tampering with signals. Do you live here?" Marcus let out a soft chuckle. "Yes, officer. I just moved in. I was changing my Wi-Fi settings." The younger officer approached and looked inside the garage. Modem. Laptop. Network cables. No bombs. No weapons. Just tech. The older officer glanced back at his partner. "You have ID, sir." Marcus, now slightly irritated, kept his hands in sight and moved to grab his wallet. He handed over his driver's license, which had the same address they were standing in front of. "Okay, Marcus Green," the older cop said. "You're saying this is your property?" "I'm not saying it. The deed is in my name." "Want to see that too?" The younger officer smirked awkwardly. "No need. Everything seems fine." Marcus tilted his head. "So I got the police called on me for changing my Wi-Fi." There was a long silence. "Well, someone thought it looked suspicious," the senior officer replied. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Let me guess. Middle-aged white woman, lives across the street." They didn't answer. But the silence spoke volumes. Karen had already ducked away from the window. Marcus exhaled, his chest rising and falling slowly. You know, this isn't the first time someone's called the cops on me for existing. We're just responding to a report, the younger one mumbled, clearly uncomfortable. Marcus gave a thin smile. Yeah. That's always how it starts. The officers offered a vague apology, got back in their cars, and rolled away. Marcus stood there for a moment, processing it all. Then he turned toward the house across the street. Karen's blinds snapped shut like a mousetrap. He stared for a long moment. Oh, you want to play that game? He muttered under his breath. Okay, Karen. He walked back inside his house and sat at his computer. As a tech consultant and digital security specialist, Marcus had worked with law firms, banks, and even government contractors. He wasn't just some guy with a laptop, he was an expert. He pulled up his neighborhood's community portal. Karen had recently posted a notice about a homeowners meeting next week. And her full name and email were right there. He noted it, but he wasn't going to play dirty. He was going to play smart. Marcus opened his encrypted notepad and started typing. The response was coming, and it would be unforgettable. By Monday morning, Marcus was already 5 steps ahead. The 911 call from Saturday lingered in his mind, not because he was afraid, but because he was annoyed. He'd lived in enough places to know how fast a small incident could spiral when weaponized by someone with the wrong intentions. Karen had messed with the wrong man. He wasn't going to retaliate with noise complaints or lawn violations. No, Marcus was going to make sure what happened wouldn't be easily forgotten, or repeated. First, he filed a formal complaint with the Maple Creek Police Department. Not just a generic statement either, he requested the body cam footage from the responding officers under the Freedom of Information Act. He had a friend who worked in legal compliance and walked him through the process. It was airtight. Second, Marcus launched a search through public records and neighborhood documents. Karen Whitmore was more involved in the homeowners association than he expected. Not only was she a board member, she was the self-appointed head of the Community Watch Initiative, a program she likely used to keep tabs on who she felt didn't belong. He smiled, sipping his coffee. Perfect. Later that afternoon, Marcus walked out to check his mailbox just as Karen pulled into her driveway. Their eyes locked for a brief second. Hers were wide and panicked. His were calm, confident. Afternoon. He said coolly, giving her a polite nod. Karen clutched her purse a little tighter and pretended not to hear, but Marcus didn't need her to engage, he just needed her to sweat. Back inside, he fired off an email to the HOA board. He framed it respectfully but powerfully, raising concerns about a board member engaging in what he described as racially motivated harassment under the guise of neighborhood safety. He included his credentials, mentioned his work in civil liberties advocacy, and politely hinted that he would be attending the next HOA meeting. By Wednesday, whispers had started among the neighborhood Facebook groups. Someone had leaked his email. Screenshots were circulating. Some residents were alarmed. Others were embarrassed. A few messaged Marcus directly, offering quiet support. Then came Thursday. Marcus received an envelope in his mailbox, no return address, just a piece of paper that read, "Stop stirring the pot. You don't belong here." No signature. No name. Just venom. He stared at the note, his jaw tightening, then walked straight into his garage, pulled down a plastic case from a high shelf, and unlatched it. Inside was a slim black camera kit. Compact. Discreet. Perfect. That night, Marcus installed motion-activated security cameras around his house, including one that faced the street and his mailbox. He synced the footage to a secure cloud account and set it to send alerts directly to his phone. The next day, the police department emailed back. The body cam footage from Saturday's incident was ready for pickup. Marcus downloaded the files and spent the next hour analyzing every second. The tone of the call. The language of the officers. The way they approached him like a threat instead of a homeowner. The video showed exactly what it needed to, and Marcus knew it was time. Saturday arrived, and with it, the neighborhood HOA meeting. The community hall was packed, unusually full for what was normally a half-hearted discussion of trash schedules and lawn height ordinances. Karen sat near the front in a bright floral blouse, face flushed and lips tight. She avoided Marcus's gaze as he entered. He took his seat in the middle of the room. Calm. Focused, the meeting opened with a few routine items, but it didn't take long for the room to turn electric. "I'd like to bring up a recent matter of concern," Marcus said, standing to address the room. Karen stiffened. A few days ago, I was approached by police in my own garage, accused of suspicious activity. Why? Because I was updating my internet settings. A neighbor called 911 on me, without even speaking to me. I was treated like a criminal for existing. A few gasps echoed through the crowd. I submitted a FOIA request and obtained the body cam footage, Marcus continued, holding up a flash drive. I'd like to submit it to the board. Karen's voice rang out, high and brittle. This isn't an appropriate topic for the HOA. A man near the back stood up. If a board member is using 911 like a personal complaint line, that's everyone's business. Murmurs of agreement spread through the room. Karen's face turned beet red. He's trying to stir racial tensions. Marcus didn't flinch. I'm pointing out a dangerous pattern. If I had reacted differently that day, I could have ended up in handcuffs, or worse. And all because someone made a false assumption about me. Another woman raised her hand. We've lived here for 10 years. Karen called the police on my teenage son once because he wore a hoodie. More voices joined in. Stories. Incidents. A pattern began to emerge. Karen's reign of quiet intimidation was unraveling. Marcus stood tall, letting the silence do the work. Then, calmly, he spoke. I moved here to live in peace. But peace doesn't come from ignoring problems. It comes from addressing them. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. The board members shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to proceed. One member, a young Latino father named Diego, finally said, I think we need to take this seriously. If a board member is misusing their role or endangering neighbors with false reports, we need to consider removal. Karen stood, flustered. This is ridiculous. I was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. Marcus met her gaze for the first time that evening. You called the police on your new neighbor. For changing his Wi-Fi. Karen sat down, silent now. The room simmered. The wheels of change had been set in motion, but Marcus wasn't finished. He had something else planned, something that would take this conversation beyond the neighborhood, because some stories are too important to keep quiet. By the time the HOA meeting ended, Karen had vanished through the side door like a ghost. Her carefully curated reputation had taken a direct hit, and Marcus knew the ripple effects were just beginning. He walked home under the amber glow of the streetlights, a quiet hum of satisfaction buzzing in his chest. But beneath it was something deeper, resolve. This wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about every person like her who felt emboldened to weaponize 911 against black and brown folks minding their business. And now that Marcus had exposed her, he knew she'd either retreat or retaliate. The next morning proved which path she'd chosen. At 6:03 a.m., Marcus was jolted awake by the sound of someone pounding on his front door. Bang! 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 He grabbed his hoodie, slipped on sneakers, and looked through the peephole. 2 uniformed officers stood outside. He opened the door slowly. Morning, said the taller one. We received a report about potential stolen equipment being stored at this residence. Mind if we take a look? Marcus blinked. Stolen equipment? The officer glanced down at his clipboard. Yeah, neighbor reported seeing suspicious tech gear being carried into the garage. Claims it might be linked to a recent electronics theft at a nearby Best Buy. Marcus almost laughed. Are you serious? You mean the Wi-Fi equipment I was installing last weekend? Or maybe the security cameras I mounted to stop this exact kind of harassment? The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. Sir, we're not accusing you. Just following up on a complaint. If everything checks out, we'll be out of your hair. Marcus didn't back down. You got a warrant? No, sir. Just asking for voluntary cooperation. He folded his arms. Then I respectfully decline. The taller officer's jaw tightened, but Marcus leaned forward slightly, calm and unwavering. This is the second time I've had police at my door over complete nonsense. You might want to check who's filing these reports and ask yourself why. The younger officer nodded, his tone softening. Understood, sir. We'll log it and move on. Marcus closed the door and exhaled. His phone buzzed. His cameras had recorded the entire interaction. Perfect. He immediately filed another complaint, this time copying the city council and tagging the local news station in his post on social media. He attached the clip of the officers at his door and captioned it, Imagine being reported twice in 1 week, for changing your Wi-Fi and installing security cameras. Welcome to life in Maple Creek. Hashtag living while black. The post went viral within hours. Comments flooded in. This is outrageous. Where's the accountability? She really called the cops again. Name and shame. Enough is enough. Marcus knew the power of public pressure. His video made its way onto TikTok and X, formerly Twitter, sparking national conversation. Local reporters reached out for interviews. One podcast host messaged him, offering to feature his story, but Marcus wasn't after clout. He had a plan. He dug deeper into Karen's background and discovered she worked part-time as a substitute teacher for the district. That meant she was around children, many of whom didn't look like her. And if her behavior in the neighborhood was any indication of her bias, that was a serious problem. Marcus met with a civil rights attorney, dropped off his compiled footage, reports, and a list of complaints other neighbors had privately shared. This could become a civil case, the attorney said, eyebrows raised as he flipped through the evidence. Or a full-blown lawsuit. Marcus smiled. That's what I'm hoping. But the real twist came that evening. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, Marcus heard a soft knock on his door. He checked his monitor. It wasn't the police this time, it was Diego, the HOA board member who had supported Marcus during the meeting. Marcus opened the door. Hey, man. Diego stepped in, looking serious. We need to talk. He closed the door behind him and leaned in. I just came from a board emergency session. Karen submitted a motion to suspend you from the HOA for disruptive behavior. Marcus raised a brow. She's trying to kick me out. Diego nodded. But listen, it didn't pass. People are scared. But they're watching. She's losing grip, and she knows it. Marcus narrowed his eyes. She's going to keep pushing. Yeah, but here's the thing, she also submitted a written complaint to the school board claiming you threatened her at the meeting. Marcus blinked. What? Diego nodded. Said you made her feel unsafe. That you intimidated her and publicly humiliated her. Marcus's jaw clenched. She's flipping the narrative. She's desperate, Diego said. And that makes her dangerous. Marcus nodded, suddenly more certain than ever. Then it's time to turn up the heat. The next day, he did a live stream. Clean background. Calm voice. No yelling. Just truth, he laid it all out. The 911 call over his Wi-Fi, the second police visit about stolen equipment. The HOA backlash, Karen's latest accusations, then, he dropped the bombshell, I'm working with an attorney. And we're exploring all legal options. Because this isn't just about me. It's about the black kid who gets cops called on him for walking his dog. Or the Latina mom accused of stealing because she's carrying 2 grocery bags. Enough is enough. Thousands tuned in, the comments section exploded, we got your back, Marcus. This happens way too often. Proud of you for standing up. Please sue the brakes off her. That night, Marcus sat on his porch, watching as Karen peeked through her blinds. Trying to see what he was doing, he smiled. He wasn't done yet, this was just the beginning. The silence on Maple Creek Lane didn't last long. At 8 a.m. sharp, Marcus's doorbell rang again. He checked the monitor. This time it wasn't cops, neighbors, or reporters. It was Shanice, a local investigative journalist from Channel 8 News. She had messaged him the night before asking for a formal interview. Marcus opened the door, half expecting more drama. Instead, she smiled, calm and focused. Morning. I hope now's a good time. He nodded. It's as good a time as any. She stepped into the living room, already scanning the place for good lighting. Your story's bigger than just a bad neighbor. People are connecting with it. You've become a symbol for something a lot deeper. He gave a tight smile. I didn't ask to be a symbol. I just wanted to set up my internet. She nodded knowingly. That's how it always starts. They began filming. Shanice kept it real, asking hard-hitting questions without pushing a narrative. Marcus recounted every detail, the original Wi-Fi incident, the police harassment, Karen's vendetta, the HOA meetings, and her attempt to paint him as a threat. I'm not the angry black man she wants to portray, Marcus said, steady and direct. I'm the calm one. The prepared one. And I'm not backing down. The segment aired later that evening. By the next morning, the video had over 200,000 views online. National networks were resharing it. And Marcus's inbox was flooded with interview requests, support messages, and even a few hate-filled threats, which only confirmed what he already knew. He was rattling a very old cage, but the game changer came when he received a voicemail from Dr. Elias Monroe, a renowned civil rights lawyer known for tearing apart discriminatory systems in court. "Mr. Gray, I saw your interview. I believe your case has teeth, and it could set precedent. If you're interested, let's talk strategy." Marcus wasted no time calling him back. 2 hours later, they sat across from each other at a private law office downtown. Dr. Monroe had already reviewed all the video footage, social media posts, and formal complaints. "This isn't just a civil nuisance," Monroe said. "It's a pattern of racial harassment. False police reports, slander, attempted public character assassination. She's dancing dangerously close to felony territory." Marcus leaned forward. "You think she could go to jail? If we pursue this aggressively, and link her complaints to institutional abuse, like her job at the school district, it could get very ugly for her. Fast." That night, Monroe's team filed 2 notices: 1, a cease and desist order to Karen, citing defamation and harassment; 2, a formal grievance to the school board about her behavior, suggesting a review of her role in education. The letter to the school board hit like a wrecking ball. By the end of the week, Karen was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Marcus didn't gloat. He didn't post a thing. Silence was louder now, but Karen. She cracked. Saturday morning, a loud knock startled Marcus again. He peered through the peephole. This time, it was Karen herself, not in her polished tennis gear, but in baggy sweats, unkempt hair, and a face swollen from crying. He didn't open the door. "Marcus," she called out, voice trembling. "Please. I didn't mean for things to go this far. This whole neighborhood's turning on me. People at the school. They're treating me like a criminal." He remained silent. She leaned closer to the door. "I'm not a racist. I swear. I just thought you were up to something suspicious. That's all. It was a misunderstanding." Still silent, Karen's voice sharpened. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? You don't have to ruin my life over this." Marcus pressed the speaker button on his security intercom. His voice echoed from the porch. "You called the police on me twice. Lied about stolen electronics. Tried to get me removed from my own neighborhood. Now you're sorry." She winced. "I panicked, all right." "You were making a scene," he cut her off. "No, Karen. I was making a point. You just didn't like that it worked." She tried again. "Please. Just call off the lawyer. I can't lose my job. My pension. My reputation. Should have thought of that before weaponizing 911. Then, without another word, he ended the call. She stood there for a long moment, then stumbled away, tears running down her face. Inside, Marcus's phone buzzed again. "Monroe, just got off the call with her district superintendent. They're launching a full review of her behavior, both inside and outside school grounds. This is bigger than just your case now." That night, Diego invited Marcus to another HOA gathering, this time, not in secret. A full community forum was held in the clubhouse, packed with residents tired of the toxic tension that had infected their neighborhood. The meeting opened with the HOA president, a timid man who usually avoided conflict. But tonight, he was firm. "We've all seen the headlines. We've watched what's happening on our very street. This is no longer about neighbors disagreeing. It's about protecting the integrity of our community, and the safety of the people in it." Diego stepped up next. "What Karen did wasn't just mean. It was dangerous. That 911 call could have gotten Marcus killed. If you don't believe that, then you're part of the problem." Heads nodded. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Then Marcus was invited to speak. He walked to the podium, holding up his phone. "This," he said, pointing to the camera, "is why I installed security systems. Why I recorded everything. Not just for me, but to prove that what happens in neighborhoods like this is real. This is Maple Creek. Not some redneck town in the middle of nowhere." He looked around the room, eyes meeting neighbor after neighbor. "I'm not looking for pity. I'm demanding respect. I have the right to live in peace. I have the right to change my Wi-Fi without fearing for my life. And if you're okay with what Karen did, then you're okay with someone dying next time. Silence filled the room, no one argued, no one defended her, and for the first time, Marcus felt something shift. Not just in the neighborhood, but in himself. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about making sure no one else had to go through what he did. By Monday morning, the air on Maple Creek Lane had changed. The usual chirping birds and neatly trimmed lawns were now overshadowed by whispers, sideways glances, and a thick cloud of discomfort no one dared address directly. Karen's house remained eerily quiet, no morning jogs, no chatty front porch phone calls, not even the usual hum of her leaf blower. It was like her presence had been erased overnight, but Marcus knew better. People like Karen didn't just disappear. They regrouped. He kept his focus on work, attending meetings remotely from his home office. But the messages kept coming, support from across the country, stories from other black men and women who had faced similar harassment. One message stood out: they tried to do the same thing to my brother when he was walking home from work. They said he fit the description. He almost got shot. Thank you for not staying silent. Marcus read it twice, then saved it to a folder he was building called the archive. He didn't know what he'd do with it yet, but the evidence mattered. The patterns mattered. The truth had weight. Later that day, a knock came at the door. This time, it was Officer Jenkins, one of the few cops in town Marcus had some respect for. Jenkins wasn't just a uniform, he had a reputation for standing up to bias, even when it put him at odds with his department. "Hey, Mr. Gray," Jenkins said as Marcus opened the door. "Can we talk?" Marcus eyed him cautiously. "If this is about Karen, it is," Jenkins replied, stepping onto the porch but keeping a respectful distance. "And it's about the precinct, too. Look, off the record, there are officers in this department who are uncomfortable with how things were handled." The dispatch recordings from her 911 call were reviewed again. "Some higher-ups aren't happy." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Unhappy that she lied, or that I didn't take it quietly?" Jenkins sighed. "Both. But mostly, there's pressure now. People are watching. Your story's gone national. And some of us believe what happened was wrong." Marcus folded his arms. "So what do you want from me?" Jenkins pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. "This is the Internal Affairs report. It's unofficial, but you didn't get it from me. Let's just say certain decisions were made before the facts were verified. Including that second response unit they sent to your house." Marcus took the paper, scanning the first few lines. The document detailed the sequence of dispatches and the officer's decision to escalate the situation. The language danced around accountability, but it was clear. "The department messed up," Jenkins lowered his voice. "They're hoping this doesn't lead to a lawsuit. Or worse, federal attention." Marcus looked up, expression hardening. "Tell them to prepare for both." That night, Marcus sat with Monroe and Shanice again, this time at a dimly lit cafe downtown. Over steaming mugs of black coffee, they went through the document Jenkins had handed him. Monroe grinned, tapping a section of the report. "Right here. This is gold. Proof they acted on Karen's word without verification. That's a violation of protocol and civil rights." Shanice added, "This could blow the whole thing open. If we time the release right, we'll control the narrative before the department can spin it." But Marcus wasn't thinking about timing or headlines, he was thinking about the last 2 years he had spent quietly rebuilding his life after losing his brother to a police shooting in Detroit. That had been his real reason for moving to Maple Creek. He didn't want a war. He wanted peace. Now the war had come anyway. A few days later, Marcus woke up to flashing lights, again. But this time, it wasn't for him. He stepped onto the porch and saw 2 school district officials knocking on Karen's door. With them stood 2 plainclothes officers and a legal representative. Karen emerged in a bathrobe, bewildered, then panicked when she saw the camera crew across the street. Shanice was already live. "Breaking update on the Maple Creek case," she narrated. Karen Wilford, the local school board employee who called 911 on her neighbor under false pretenses, is being served with official notice of investigation and possible suspension due to misconduct and endangerment. Karen tried to shut the door, but the papers had already been handed over. She yelled at the camera crew. "You people need to leave me alone. I'm not the villain here." One of the officials calmly replied, "Ma'am, you need to speak with your attorney." You are not authorized to make public comments during this investigation. Marcus watched from a distance. He didn't feel joy. He didn't feel triumph, he felt tired. The next morning, an envelope appeared at his door. No return address, inside, a handwritten letter. You think you've won. But you've just made enemies. People in this neighborhood remember things. Be careful what you do next. Watch your back. No signature. No fingerprints. Just a threat cloaked in cowardice. Marcus scanned it, logged it in the archive, and handed it over to Monroe. This is escalation, Monroe said grimly. We'll contact law enforcement, but also start surveillance. I'll have a security consultant review your home. Marcus nodded. He wasn't surprised. The further you push against systems designed to suppress, the harder they push back. The next few days were a whirlwind. National TV interviews. Radio talk shows. Even a podcast with a retired FBI agent who praised Marcus's restraint and strategy. But it wasn't just media attention now, people were mobilizing. In the following week, a rally was organized at the town courthouse. Hundreds showed up, black, white, Latino, Asian, all holding signs like changing your Wi-Fi isn't a crime and accountability, not apologies. Marcus stood on stage beside Monroe, Shanice, and Jenkins. Let this be a message, Marcus declared into the microphone. We are not here to burn things down, we are here to rebuild what should have never been broken. Our rights. Our dignity. Our safety. The crowd erupted in cheers, but somewhere in that crowd, he saw a familiar face, Karen, standing in the back, sunglasses on, lips pursed. Watching. Still silent, still dangerous, Marcus didn't flinch. He stared straight back. This was far from over. Marcus's heart was steady, but his mind raced. As the crowd continued cheering behind him, he held Karen's gaze for a long, charged moment. The rally had just ended, but the real war was entering its next phase. He could feel it, something brewing behind those cold, tinted lenses of hers. She wasn't done. And neither was he. Later that night, Marcus sat in his living room, a tall glass of water in one hand and his phone in the other, skimming through a flood of messages. Among them was an encrypted email from Monroe. New development. Someone tried to hack into your home network. Packet logs trace it to an IP address registered to a real estate firm. Karen's brother sits on the board. Marcus's jaw tightened. So they were trying to dig deeper now, maybe find something to twist, to exploit. They wanted him discredited. Broken. Silenced, he forwarded the email to Shanice and typed, "Let's get ahead of this. I want this public by tomorrow morning." The next day, Shanice went live with the new intel. Breaking, sources confirm a failed attempt to breach Marcus Gray's private home network. Traced to a firm tied to Karen Wilford's family. The community is demanding accountability, not just from Karen, but from everyone enabling this harassment. By noon, the firm issued a statement claiming they had no knowledge of the activity and promised a full internal audit. But the damage was done. People weren't buying it. Hashtags like #HackHerNotMe and #KarenExposed exploded on social media. Karen's name trended for the fourth time in 2 weeks. That same evening, Marcus walked to his mailbox, careful to scan his surroundings. A black SUV rolled slowly down the street and paused in front of his house. Its windows were tinted darker than legal, and it idled for several seconds too long. Marcus stared at it. It stared back, then it drove off. Monroe had warned him, the game has shifted. You're in their crosshairs now. But so are they in yours. We need to think like them, then move smarter. The next day, Marcus went on the offensive. He filed formal legal complaints, not just against Karen, but against the police officers who responded to her false 911 call. He submitted documentation of the hacking attempt. He retained a civil rights attorney who specialized in digital harassment and false accusations, but most importantly, he made a bold move. He called for public hearings. It was a risky strategy. Maple Creek was a small town, and public hearings on racial bias and police misconduct weren't common, or welcome. But with national eyes on the situation, the mayor and city council had no choice. A date was set for the following Friday. The pressure mounted quickly. Karen finally emerged from silence. That Thursday, she released a video statement from her lawyer's office. "I never meant to cause harm," she began, seated stiffly behind a desk. "I truly believed my safety was at risk. I understand things escalated, and I regret any distress caused to Mr. Gray. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. It was a performance, one Marcus refused to watch twice. The comments section underneath her video tore it apart. No apology, no ownership. How is changing Wi-Fi threatening your safety? Classic Karen. Cry when caught. Friday arrived with a gray overcast sky. The town hall chamber was filled to capacity. Marcus sat in the front row beside Monroe, Shanice, and Officer Jenkins, who had been asked to testify as a witness. Karen, to no one's surprise, did not show up. Her attorney read a brief statement and left. The hearing began with testimony from the police dispatch supervisor, who admitted that Karen's call had lacked verification and that the response team had failed to follow de-escalation protocols. Then came Officer Jenkins. The initial report didn't align with what we found on the scene, he stated plainly. Marcus Gray was in his own yard. Calm. Non-threatening. We should have never approached him the way we did. Gasps rippled through the room. Then Marcus stood. I am not here today just because a woman called 911, he said clearly. I am here because systems responded to that call as if I were a danger, without proof. Without pause, and without principle. That is the real threat. And if it happened to me, it can happen to anyone. Thunderous applause followed. But as he returned to his seat, his phone buzzed, unknown number. No caller ID, he let it go to voicemail, but a text followed immediately. You think this is over? We know who you are. We know where you've been. Try us. Monroe read the message over his shoulder. They're rattled. Good. That means we're hitting the right nerves. Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he did what they feared most. He shared the threat with his followers. Took a screenshot. Posted it with one word, cowards. Within minutes, national news picked it up. Even celebrities began speaking out. Influencers called for deeper investigations into Maple Creek's law enforcement and political ties, and then the final twist hit. Shanice burst into Marcus's house late that night, her laptop open, her face pale. They found something, she said breathlessly. Karen has a sealed complaint from 3 years ago, filed by a black teenage boy who says she accused him of theft in the same neighborhood. The case was buried. Marcus stood up slowly. Where'd this come from? An anonymous tipster. I traced the IP, it came from inside the police department. Marcus and Monroe exchanged looks. There was a mole. An ally, and someone wanted Karen gone just as badly as they did. The next morning, the town awoke to a bombshell report from Shanice's blog titled, Pattern of Prejudice, Karen's History of Targeting Black Men Surfaces. The story ripped through every major outlet. Civil rights organizations released statements. A petition demanding Karen's immediate firing from the school board hit 100,000 signatures in 3 hours, but it wasn't over, not yet. Karen hadn't made her final move. And Marcus knew it. She'd played the victim. She'd played the silence card. But desperate people with everything to lose often turn dangerous, and she had nothing left to lose. Marcus's heart was steady, but his mind raced. As the crowd continued cheering behind him, he held Karen's gaze for a long, charged moment. The rally had just ended, but the real war was entering its next phase. He could feel it, something brewing behind those cold, tinted lenses of hers. She wasn't done. And neither was he. Later that night, Marcus sat in his living room, a tall glass of water in one hand and his phone in the other, skimming through a flood of messages. Among them was an encrypted email from Monroe. New development. Someone tried to hack into your home network. Packet logs trace it to an IP address registered to a real estate firm. Karen's brother sits on the board. Marcus's jaw tightened. So they were trying to dig deeper now, maybe find something to twist, to exploit. They wanted him discredited. Broken. Silenced. He forwarded the email to Shanice and typed, let's get ahead of this. I want this public by tomorrow morning. The next day, Shanice went live with the new intel. Breaking. Sources confirm a failed attempt to breach Marcus Gray's private home network. Traced to a firm tied to Karen Wilford's family. The community is demanding accountability, not just from Karen, but from everyone enabling this harassment. By noon, the firm issued a statement claiming they had no knowledge of the activity and promised a full internal audit. But the damage was done. People weren't buying it. Hashtags like hashtag #HackHerNotMe and hashtag KarenExposed exploded on social media. Karen's name trended for the fourth time in 2 weeks. That same evening, Marcus walked to his mailbox, careful to scan his surroundings. A black SUV rolled slowly down the street and paused in front of his house. Its windows were tinted darker than legal, and it idled for several seconds too long. Marcus stared at it. It stared back, then it drove off. Monroe had warned him, the game has shifted. You're in their crosshairs now. But so are they in yours. We need to think like them, then move smarter. The next day, Marcus went on the offensive. He filed formal legal complaints, not just against Karen, but against the police officers who responded to her false 911 call. He submitted documentation of the hacking attempt. He retained a civil rights attorney who specialized in digital harassment and false accusations, but most importantly, he made a bold move. He called for public hearings. It was a risky strategy. Maple Creek was a small town, and public hearings on racial bias and police misconduct weren't common, or welcome. But with national eyes on the situation, the mayor and city council had no choice. A date was set for the following Friday. The pressure mounted quickly. Karen finally emerged from silence. That Thursday, she released a video statement from her lawyer's office. "I never meant to cause harm," she began, seated stiffly behind a desk. "I truly believed my safety was at risk. I understand things escalated, and I regret any distress caused to Mr. Gray." She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. It was a performance, one Marcus refused to watch twice. The comments section underneath her video tore it apart. No apology, no ownership. How is changing Wi-Fi threatening your safety? Classic Karen. Cry when caught. Friday arrived with a gray, overcast sky. The town hall chamber was filled to capacity. Marcus sat in the front row beside Monroe, Shanice, and Officer Jenkins, who had been asked to testify as a witness. Karen, to no one's surprise, did not show up. Her attorney read a brief statement and left. The hearing began with testimony from the police dispatch supervisor, who admitted that Karen's call had lacked verification and that the response team had failed to follow de-escalation protocols. Then came Officer Jenkins. "The initial report didn't align with what we found on the scene," he stated plainly. Marcus Gray was in his own yard. Calm. Non-threatening. "We should have never approached him the way we did." Gasps rippled through the room. Then Marcus stood. "I am not here today just because a woman called 911, he said clearly. "I am here because systems responded to that call as if I were a danger, without proof. Without pause, and without principle. That is the real threat. And if it happened to me, it can happen to anyone." Thunderous applause followed. But as he returned to his seat, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. No caller ID. He let it go to voicemail, but a text followed immediately. "You think this is over? We know who you are. We know where you've been. Try us." Monroe read the message over his shoulder. "They're rattled." "Good. That means we're hitting the right nerves." Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he did what they feared most. He shared the threat with his followers. Took a screenshot. Posted it with one word: cowards. Within minutes, national news picked it up. Even celebrities began speaking out. Influencers called for deeper investigations into Maple Creek's law enforcement and political ties, and then the final twist hit. Shanice burst into Marcus's house late that night, her laptop open, her face pale. "They found something," she said breathlessly. "Karen has a sealed complaint from 3 years ago, filed by a black teenage boy who says she accused him of theft in the same neighborhood. The case was buried." Marcus stood up slowly. "Where'd this come from?" "An anonymous tipster. I traced the IP, it came from inside the police department." Marcus and Monroe exchanged looks. There was a mole. An ally, and someone wanted Karen gone just as badly as they did. The next morning, the town awoke to a bombshell report from Shanice's blog titled, "Pattern of Prejudice, Karen's History of Targeting Black Men Surfaces." The story ripped through every major outlet. Civil rights organizations released statements. A petition demanding Karen's immediate firing from the school board hit 100,000 signatures in 3 hours, but it wasn't over, not yet. Karen hadn't made her final move. And Marcus knew it. She'd played the victim. She'd played the silence card. But desperate people with everything to lose often turn dangerous, and she had nothing left to lose. The sun barely peeked through the blinds as Marcus sat in silence at his kitchen table, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug that read, "Neighborhood Nerd." His phone rested on the table like a silent bomb, glowing softly with fresh updates. The fallout from Shanice's explosive report was still unfolding, and Karen's name had become a national conversation, again. Only this time, it wasn't just about false accusations. It was about a pattern. The sealed complaint from the black teenager 3 years prior had reopened wounds the town didn't even want to acknowledge. The victim, now a college sophomore named Terrence Martin, had contacted Shanice anonymously after seeing Marcus's story. His testimony had been emotional, damning, and indisputable. "I was just walking to my cousin's house," Terrence had said in a recorded interview. Karen said, "I looked like someone who had stolen a package. The cops came, forced me to the ground, bruised my ribs. No one ever apologized. Not her. Not them." The internet responded in fury. Karen's school board position was under fire. Protesters had gathered outside her workplace and her gated neighborhood. Sponsors pulled out of community events she once chaired, but Karen still hadn't said a word, until now. It started with a shaky, unlisted YouTube video posted at 2:37 a.m. Her eyes were swollen, her mascara streaked. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I need people to understand," she began, voice cracking. "I never meant for things to go this far. I was afraid. That day, I really believed something was wrong." Her voice lowered, "But this mob mentality. This destruction of my life. All over a misunderstanding. Is that justice?" The video ended with a long stare into the camera, then darkness. Marcus didn't blink. "It's a confession disguised as victimhood," Monroe muttered, reviewing the footage. "She's trying to rally sympathy from the same audience that once defended her. But that pool's dried up." And then came the call. Karen had requested a private meeting. Not through her lawyer. Not through the police. Directly. A handwritten letter had been slipped into Marcus's mailbox. "I want to speak. Just us. No cameras. No press. I owe you that." Monroe advised against it. "She's desperate." "That's dangerous." Shanice agreed. "What if it's a trap? What if she tries to flip it into another headline?" But Marcus had a gut instinct. "No cameras. Just me and her," he said firmly. "Let's see if she's ready to say something real." The meeting was arranged in a neutral location, an old church basement used by local community groups. It was quiet. Dim, neutral ground. Marcus arrived first, dressed simply in jeans and a button-up shirt. No entourage. No security. Just a small audio recorder in his pocket, just in case. Karen walked in 10 minutes later, wearing a pale gray coat, hair pulled back tight. She clutched a folder in one hand and her keys in the other like a lifeline. For a long moment, they said nothing, then she spoke. "I didn't come to argue," she said. "I didn't come to beg. I came to explain." Marcus nodded slowly, gesturing to a chair. She sat, carefully placing the folder on the table between them. "When I saw you outside that day, I panicked. I'd heard stories. Break-ins, strangers lurking. I saw a black man messing with a box on the side of the house next door, and my mind just went there." Marcus folded his arms. "You didn't see a criminal. You decided I was one." Karen's lips trembled. "That's what I'm trying to say. I didn't think, I reacted. It was wrong. But it wasn't hate. Not the way people think." Marcus leaned forward, voice low and calm. "You weaponized your fear. You called armed officers on me because you didn't feel the need to verify anything. That's hate. That's bias. That's how people die." Karen looked down at the folder. "There's something in here," she said. "My personnel file. A complaint from my time in Denver. I was asked to leave quietly. I never told anyone." She pushed the folder toward him. Marcus didn't reach for it. "I want you to have it," she continued. "Use it if you want. I deserve what's coming. But I need to say this." She looked him square in the eyes. "I was raised in a home where black people were the punchline of dinner table jokes. I never questioned it until college. I buried that stuff deep. But I never unlearned it. That's on me. Marcus let the silence hang for a moment. That's more honesty than I expected, he said finally. Karen's voice cracked. What are you going to do with all this? Marcus stood up. I'm not a monster. I'm not looking for revenge. But I will seek accountability. For me. For Terrence. For every other name you don't even remember. She nodded, eyes glassy. As he walked out, she called after him, do you ever forgive people like me? He paused, hand on the doorknob. I forgive people who choose to change. Not just talk about it. The door shut behind him. The next day, Marcus released a blog post, not with the folder, not with a takedown, but with a reflection. Accountability is not humiliation. It's honesty. And sometimes, the most powerful thing someone can say is, I was wrong. The response was electric. Many commended him. Others wanted the folder published. Some accused him of going soft. But Marcus knew this wasn't about pleasing everyone, it was about truth. Later that evening, Shanice burst through the door again, face lit up with adrenaline. We got a lead. On who sent the hacking tip? You won't believe this. Marcus stood. What is it? She handed him her tablet. On it, a confidential internal memo from the Maple Creek PD, signed by someone they'd never suspected, and that signature, it changed everything. Marcus stared at the tablet in silence, his eyes scanning the signature at the bottom of the confidential memo Shanice had uncovered. His jaw clenched as the name registered, Deputy Chief Raymond Slater, the second highest ranking officer in Maple Creek's police force, and Karen's former next-door neighbor. What the hell is he doing connected to this? Marcus muttered, his voice sharp. Shanice pointed at the memo. This was buried in the internal server. Someone tried to delete it, but our source retrieved it. It's dated 2 days before Karen called 911 on you. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Read it again. Shanice did, per intel gathered through unofficial civilian reports and prior disturbances in the neighborhood. Subject Marcus Rowe is to be flagged under Category Yellow, potential threat. Recommendation, discreet surveillance advised. Note, Civilian Identifier, KD, has agreed to assist in monitoring activities for community safety. KD, Marcus repeated. Karen Davidson. Shanice nodded. She wasn't just a concerned neighbor. She was feeding your name into a police database under pretense. This was a setup. Marcus's chest rose and fell with mounting anger. That explains why the officers came in hot that day. They weren't responding to a generic call. They were responding to a flagged target. Monroe, standing by the door, spoke up. Slater has a record. He was suspended back in '08 after being accused of falsifying reports. Internal Affairs let him slide. No criminal charges. Marcus's mind spun. So he and Karen conspired. For what? To harass me over Wi-Fi? No, Shanice said, eyes locked on her screen. It's bigger. You weren't the only one. There are 4 other names. All black. All residents in upper-middle-class neighborhoods. All flagged under Category Yellow in the last 6 months. Let me guess, Marcus said. Each of them had some kind of property dispute or minor civil issue. Shanice scrolled. Yup. One had a loud music complaint. Another got flagged for suspicious packages delivered too often. They were being watched. Monroe crossed his arms. This isn't neighborhood policing. This is systemic profiling with a digital paper trail. Marcus leaned against the wall, fire burning behind his eyes. So the so-called Wi-Fi call was never about suspicion. It was bait. Karen lit the match, and Slater sent in the fire. Shanice pulled up another file. Here's the kicker, Slater owns shares in a private security company bidding for a contract in Maple Creek. A contract that would include running neighborhood surveillance programs. Marcus's eyes widened. So if the town believed crime was on the rise, even in safe neighborhoods, they'd approve the contract. Shanice nodded grimly. And Karen's reports created the illusion of rising danger. Slater's company stood to profit. The room went cold. Monroe snapped into gear. We need to move carefully. If we go public without hard evidence, they'll bury it. We need a whistleblower. Someone inside the department. Marcus took a deep breath, his mind racing. What about the officer who showed up the day Karen called the cops on me? Officer Hayes. He looked shaken that day. Almost embarrassed. Shanice raised an eyebrow. Think he'd talk? Only one way to find out. They found Officer Hayes working a desk shift at the downtown precinct. He looked surprised when Marcus and Monroe appeared unannounced. Mr. O. He said, standing. You filing a new report? No, Marcus said. But I need 5 minutes of your time. Off the record. Hayes hesitated. Glancing over his shoulder. Monroe flashed his old federal badge. That did the trick. They met in a break room, away from cameras. Hayes leaned against the sink, fidgeting. Look, I know why you're here. And I'm sorry for what happened that day. I shouldn't have come in like that. Why did you? Marcus asked calmly. Hayes sighed. Because we were told you were hostile. That you'd had prior run-ins with neighbors. When we ran your name, it came up flagged. Yellow tear. I didn't question it. I should have. Who gave that order? Monroe asked, voice like steel. Hayes paused. It came from up top. Slater. Monroe leaned in. You willing to go on record? Hayes shook his head. If I do, I'm done here. He's protected. Half the department owes him favors. Marcus stepped closer. What if I told you there were others like me? That Karen wasn't just paranoid, that she was working with Slater for profit? Hayes looked stunned. I didn't know that, he said slowly. But I believe you. Marcus nodded. Then help us. Not just for me. For everyone. Hayes hesitated. Then pulled out his phone. There's a log. From dispatch. Every category yellow alert is recorded and timestamped. If I can get in, download the raw files, it could prove your case. Monroe reached into his coat and handed Hayes a USB drive. This will encrypt automatically. Get the files. Bring them to this address. He handed him a card. Hayes tucked it away, heart pounding. You didn't see me. As he slipped out, Monroe muttered, either he's brave. Or suicidal. Later that night, Marcus sat in his living room with his laptop open. Hayes's files had come through. Over 100 entries. Dozens of names. Nearly all black or Latino. All tagged for baseless suspicious activity. It was a digital blueprint for discrimination. Shanice stood beside him, filming with quiet reverence. This, she whispered, is going to blow the lid off. But just as Marcus began uploading the story draft to his site, his screen went black. What the? He said, tapping the keyboard. Shanice's camera died. Monroe's phone wouldn't power up. Every device in the house went dark. Then a car pulled up outside. Marcus moved to the window, heart pounding, a black SUV with tinted windows. No plates. The door opened, and out stepped Slater. He wasn't wearing his uniform. Just a leather jacket, slacks, and a calm expression that made Marcus's blood boil. He knows, Shanice said, backing away. Monroe reached for his concealed holster. Slater didn't knock, he simply walked up to the front door. And waited. Marcus opened the door slowly, tension thick in the air. Slater smiled. We need to talk. Slater stood on the front porch like he owned the world. Calm. Composed. Calculating. The cold night air did nothing to cool the heat radiating from Marcus's chest as he opened the door just enough to meet him eye to eye. You've got a lot of nerve showing up here, Marcus growled. Slater's smirk widened. Relax, Mr. O. I came to talk. I assume you've seen the files. Monroe stepped behind Marcus, weapon holstered but hand resting casually near his side. Shanice stayed just out of sight, phone recording silently from behind the wall. Oh, we saw them, Monroe said. And we've got them secured. So if anything happens to us, your entire operation hits the news before sunrise. Slater chuckled. You think this is my first rodeo? Please. This little stunt of yours, you think anyone's going to believe a tech guy, a disgraced federal agent, and a YouTuber? You're amateurs playing spy games. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Then why are you here? Slater's smile faded slightly. Because I'm offering you a way out. He pulled a folded document from his coat pocket and handed it over. Marcus opened it. A cease and desist letter. Legal threats. Intimidation dressed in corporate language. You go public with any of this, and you'll be buried in lawsuits, Slater said. Character defamation, data theft, digital intrusion, hell, I'll even throw in a restraining order on behalf of MS. Davidson. The courts will eat it up. You won't win. And if we stay quiet? Monroe asked coldly. Slater shrugged. Life goes on. You go back to reviewing gadgets. She goes back to chasing clout. And you. He pointed at Monroe, stay out of trouble long enough to keep that pension. Marcus stepped forward. You surveilled us. You manipulated Karen into targeting innocent people. And now you're running a racket for a private contract using racially biased intel. You really think you can shut us up with legal paperwork? Slater's tone dropped. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to remind you. People like you don't win these fights. You think justice cares about facts? No. Justice is about power. And right now, I hold more of it than you ever will. Marcus's hands clenched, but he remained still. Silent. Watching, Slater leaned in. You should have just fixed your Wi-Fi and left it alone. Then he turned and walked back to the SUV, his shadow swallowing the front yard. As the vehicle disappeared into the darkness, Marcus exhaled. Shanice stepped forward. You got all that? She held up her phone. Crystal clear. He just hung himself. Monroe shut the door. We've got leverage, but we're out of time. He knows we're close. Which means whatever he's hiding, it's bigger than we thought. Marcus looked down at the letter. He's not scared of exposure. That means he's protected. Who's backing him? Shanice pulled out her laptop. Let's find out. The next morning, Monroe drove to City Hall while Marcus and Shanice stayed behind, scanning databases for Slater's corporate connections. Hours passed in a blur, bank statements, grant applications, vendor contracts. Then Shanice's eyes lit up, found something. Slater's security company, Civic Guard, isn't just bidding for Maple Creek. They've already signed contracts in 3 other cities. Marcus leaned in. So Maple Creek was the testing ground. And he's been using data from Karen and others like her to justify deploying neighborhood surveillance AI, Shanice said. They're using racially biased intel to train the software to flag so-called threat patterns. Marcus's stomach dropped. They're building a digital racism machine. Then Monroe's voice crackled over the phone. Guys, you won't believe this. I'm standing in the mayor's office. The city manager just confirmed, they pushed through an emergency meeting last night and awarded the Civic Guard contract. Unanimous vote. Marcus cursed. They fast-tracked it to get ahead of us. Monroe replied, worse. Slater's company begins installing surveillance towers tomorrow. Shanice paced. We have hours before the network goes live. Once that happens, any digital leak will be suppressed through the system. It's designed to auto-detect and remove posts that could damage Civic Guard's reputation. Then we release it tonight, Marcus said firmly. Shanice hesitated. You know what that means, right? The second we upload this, Slater will come for us hard. Legal action. Possibly worse. Marcus didn't blink. Let him. That night, they met on the rooftop of a parking garage in downtown Maple Creek. Marcus set up a portable Wi-Fi rig, secure, off-grid, and fast. Shanice uploaded the video compilation, Karen's original call, Slater's involvement, the surveillance plan, and Slater's threats on Marcus's doorstep. She layered it with captions, timestamps, and documentation from Hayes and the whistleblower files. They scheduled a premiere on multiple platforms, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and even encrypted forums. Then, Marcus stood in front of the camera. My name is Marcus Rowe. I was harassed in my own yard for changing my Wi-Fi router. But that was only the beginning. He paused, then continued, this is not just about me. It's about a system that lets people like Karen weaponize fear, and people like Deputy Chief Slater turn that fear into profit. But we're not going to be silent. He looked directly into the lens. We're taking back the narrative. And we need you to share this, comment, speak up, and shine a light on what's been hidden. Shanice uploaded the file. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the video went live. Within minutes, the view count spiked. Comments poured in, "This is insane. I knew there was more to that call. Tag the Doge now. We stand with Marcus." Then came the real proof. It started trending, hashtag justice for Marcus, hashtag Expo Safeguard, hashtag Karen surveillance scam. Marcus watched it all unfold, silent, but just as the numbers skyrocketed, Shanice's laptop beeped. "Oh. What? We've got an intrusion attempt. Someone's trying to shut down the feed." Marcus didn't hesitate. "We mirror it. Push it to the cloud. Share with news outlets." Monroe made calls to old contacts. Shanice activated VPN bots to scatter the servers. Still, the attack came hard, slamming firewalls, cutting feeds. "They're throwing everything at us," Shanice said. "And it's only going to escalate." Then a call came in. Marcus answered. "Mr. Rowe," said a low voice on the line. "You made a mistake." Slater again. Marcus stayed calm. "You threatened the wrong guy. This isn't over." "No," Marcus said. "It's just beginning." The morning after the video went viral, the entire town of Maple Creek buzzed like a kicked hornet's nest. Social media had exploded, local and national news outlets were now running Marcus's story, and a swarm of journalists descended on the town square. Everyone wanted to know how a simple Wi-Fi installation had unraveled a network of corporate corruption, racial profiling, and secret surveillance. But Marcus, Monroe, and Shanice knew better than to celebrate early. Civic Guard's digital attack had failed, but Slater wasn't out of moves. In fact, he was preparing for war. Inside Civic Guard's downtown headquarters, Slater was pacing like a caged animal. "Shut it down," he barked, pointing at the array of monitors showing real-time footage of protests and media chaos. "I don't care how, bury it in takedown notices, flood the platforms, sue the damn internet if you have to." One of his tech staff stammered, "We've sent over 50 copyright claims, but nothing's sticking. The story's everywhere. We underestimated how fast they'd move." Slater clenched his fists. "Then we stopped playing defense." He picked up a phone and dialed a secure line. "Activate Plan Delta. We're done playing nice." Meanwhile, Marcus and the team set up at a new location, a borrowed warehouse just outside city limits, far from Civic Guard surveillance net. Shanice had a drone in the air monitoring Slater's building, while Monroe armed the perimeter with basic counter-surveillance tools. "I don't like this," Monroe said, glancing at the road. "He's too quiet. Slater's not the kind of guy who takes a punch and walks away." Marcus nodded. "Which means he's planning something louder." Sure enough, Shanice's screen flashed red. "We've got a breach alert," she said. "A digital warrant just hit our server. Someone claimed we stole proprietary files and illegally hacked Civic Guard systems." "Let me guess," Marcus muttered. "Judge Tanner signed off." Shanice confirmed. "Same Judge Slater has in his back pocket." Monroe grabbed his coat. "They're going to try to raid this place." "Let them," Marcus replied coolly. "It's empty anyway." Shanice grinned. "We backed everything up. 10 terabytes of evidence, mirrored across decentralized servers. Even if they wipe our gear, the story lives on." Within 30 minutes, black SUVs rolled up to the warehouse. A tactical team burst through the front, only to find the place nearly deserted, just some empty desks, decoy hard drives, and a projector still playing Marcus's viral video on loop. Slater arrived moments later, fuming. He kicked a box across the floor and spun on the lead agent. "They're not here," he hissed. "No, sir," the agent confirmed. "They moved. But judging from the signal trail, they're still somewhere in the area." Slater's phone buzzed. An encrypted text lit up the screen. "Urgent, they just released the Civic Guard city contract documents to the public. DOJ's digital task force is asking questions." His stomach turned. "We're losing control of the narrative." And then the final dagger came through. Hashtag Slater surveillance was trending at number 3 in the country. Back at the team's real location, a friend's auto garage, Monroe finished taking a call from one of his old contacts at the Justice Department. "That was Agent Keller," he told Marcus. "They're watching everything now. She said they've opened a preliminary investigation into Slater and Civic Guard." Shanice raised a brow. "That's fast." "Pressure works," Monroe said. But don't think for a second Slater won't pull another trick. Marcus paced the concrete floor. He's losing in the court of public opinion, but if he can discredit us with criminal charges, we're done. Shanice clicked her tongue. Then we flipped the script. How? She pulled up a map on her screen. We live stream from outside Civic Guard headquarters. Show up unarmed, full daylight, just the truth. We tell everyone exactly what happened, starting with Karen's call, and ending with the surveillance contract conspiracy. Monroe frowned. That's risky. Marcus looked at them both. That's justice. Later that afternoon, the live stream began. Marcus stood across from Civic Guard HQ. Camera in hand, Shanice monitoring the stream's health and comments. Monroe stayed alert, eyes scanning every rooftop and vehicle. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, I'm standing in front of the building where a plan was born, one that turned racial bias into business. One that almost got me framed. And it started with a woman who couldn't believe a black man could be working on his own property. He paused. But today, we expose everything. No fear. No filter. He began unraveling the story from beginning to end, each point backed with screenshots, emails, voice recordings, and timestamps. Viewers flooded the stream. Over 50,000 live at once. Celebrities started commenting. Legal experts joined in. Former Civic Guard employees posted messages confirming what Marcus was saying, then a surprise guest appeared. Hayes, the Civic Guard whistleblower, joined via video. I worked on the predictive software, Hayes said. And I can confirm, it was coded using data Slater gathered from racially charged 911 calls. The goal wasn't protection. It was profit. The system is designed to disproportionately flag black and brown people as threats. The comments exploded, this is bigger than I thought. Someone needs to arrest Slater now. DOJ better be watching. He's a damn hero. And then Shanice leaned toward Marcus, her voice hushed, you're not going to believe this. She turned the screen, a national news station had just gone live with breaking news. The Department of Justice had officially launched a federal investigation into Civic Guard. A grand jury subpoena had been issued. Slater's personal accounts were frozen pending inquiry. Marcus's hands tightened around the phone, but even then, he wasn't satisfied. We exposed them, he said, but we haven't finished the fight. Shanice gave him a look. You have something in mind? Yes, Marcus said. It's time we reveal why they came after me so hard. Slater didn't just see a black man on a porch. He saw a threat. Monroe raised a brow. And why's that? Marcus looked between them, because of who I really am. The world watched with bated breath as Marcus leaned closer to the live stream camera. For a moment, the noise of the crowd, the messages flooding in from around the globe, and even the whir of distant helicopters seemed to fade beneath his voice. You want to know why Slater went through all this trouble to silence me? Why Karen's fake call wasn't just a nuisance but a spark to a wildfire? Marcus reached into his backpack and pulled out a file. It was thick, weathered, and stamped in bold red, confidential, federal clearance required. Shanice's eyes widened. Wait. You're going public with that? I've waited long enough, Marcus said, glancing at Monroe. It's time. He flipped open the folder and held up a photo of himself, not in jeans and a hoodie, but in full formal military dress. 4 stars on his shoulder. Dozens of ribbons on his chest. The chat exploded. Wait. Is he a general? Is this real? No way, Marcus is military. Marcus continued, I'm Lieutenant General Marcus Dalton, United States Cyber Defense Command, retired. I served over 26 years protecting this nation's digital infrastructure. I led classified missions to stop terrorist cyber attacks. I advised 2 presidents. I've briefed the Pentagon more times than I can count. And now, I'm standing here, as a civilian, racially profiled for changing my Wi-Fi settings. Monroe chuckled under his breath. That's one hell of a plot twist. Marcus wasn't finished. When Karen made that call, Slater didn't see an innocent man. He saw a black man in a nice neighborhood doing something technical, and that was enough to flag me. But once Civic Guard's system matched my name and background, it became a liability. They knew who I was. They knew I had access to information that could expose their entire operation. He stepped back, letting the weight of his words settle across the crowd, and the thousands watching online, instead of pulling out, they doubled down. Tried to discredit me, frame me, silence me. But I didn't spend my life defending this country just to be taken out by a corrupt contractor and a nosy neighbor. The live stream cut to footage, recorded earlier, of Marcus walking into a federal courthouse. Flanked by his legal team. A civil rights lawsuit had been filed. Civic Guard, Slater, Judge Tanner, and even Karen herself were named in the action. The charges ranged from unlawful surveillance to civil conspiracy, to racial profiling and intentional emotional distress, but the real kicker, Marcus's complaint included a demand for a full congressional hearing into Civic Guard's federal contracts and algorithmic racial bias. The nation was listening now. Inside Civic Guard headquarters, chaos erupted. Slater's office had been cleared out. Federal agents had seized his files, computers, and communications logs. His assistant sobbed at her desk as men in suits questioned employees. Scanned hard drives and escorted Slater out in handcuffs. He shouted, "This is political. You think a viral video can take me down?" One agent calmly responded, "It's not just the video, Mr. Slater. It's the fraud, the wiretapping, and the illegal surveillance software you've been selling across the country." Slater's face turned pale. As he was shoved into the back of a black SUV, cameras rolled. The image became the new face of justice, corruption caught, publicly humiliated, and dragged into the light. Karen, too, found herself in the spotlight, and not the flattering kind. She was doxxed, fired from her position at a nearby community college, and placed under investigation for filing a false report with racial bias. The footage of her crying during an interview, claiming she feared for her life, was promptly remixed into a meme that circled the globe within hours. Meanwhile, Marcus's livestream surged past 10 million views. He stood in front of the Civic Guard building, calm and resolute. "I didn't come here to shame Karen or Slater," he said. "I came here to shine a light on the system that allowed this to happen." The fact that something as simple as changing a Wi-Fi password could become a national headline says more about this country than I ever could. But maybe now. We're listening. He paused and looked directly into the camera. If you've ever felt silenced, profiled, dismissed, or degraded for simply being who you are, this story isn't just about me. It's about all of us. This isn't the end. This is only the beginning. A week later, Marcus appeared before Congress. In a packed hearing room, he laid out a damning testimony on digital discrimination, corporate corruption, and racial targeting through AI. Lawmakers from both sides leaned in. "Systems like Civic Guard don't just malfunction," Marcus said. "They reflect the biases of the people who build them. And when profit is tied to fear, surveillance becomes a weapon, not protection." His speech would go on to be quoted by senators, civil rights leaders, and tech experts for years. Laws were drafted. Funding was pulled from Civic Guard. Karen vanished from public life. And Marcus, he started a foundation to fight back against algorithmic bias and racial surveillance, training tech students from underrepresented backgrounds to build a better future. Shanice became the foundation's director of data integrity. Monroe took lead on community outreach. Together, they turned one racist call into a national movement for justice and reform. And as for Marcus, well, he kept the same Wi-Fi name, Karen Surveillance Network, password, mind your business. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more powerful stories that expose the truth and inspire change.